Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about how online commerce companies are managing to deliver groceries in 10 minutes. We also talk about why the coverage of the war in Ukraine is being called racist. But first, we talk about the bizarre case of Chitra Ramkrishna. Ramakrishna, up until a few years ago, was the CEO of one of India's most prestigious companies, the National Stock Exchange, or NSE, the leading stock exchange of the country. But now, the CBI is after her because of what she did during her tenure. And what she did has left many people, including those around her, completely dumbstruck. In this segment, Indian Express's Deeptiman Tiwary joins us to tell us about her strange case. So Deeptiman, could you begin by telling us who Chitra Ramkrishna is and what role did she play at the NSE?
Chitra Ramkrishna is a National Stock Exchange veteran who has been with the board since its inception in 1991. She was part of the core 5-member team that was selected by the government in the early 90s to create a screen-based pan-India stock exchange to enable clean and transparent trading. Because at that time, we all remember the Bombay Stock Exchange had been hit by the Harshad Mehta scam. And there was a need for ushering in a system which could allow transparent and clean trading at the stock exchange. So she was instrumental in that. Then later on, she held various senior positions in National Stock Exchange and later on went on to become its MD and CEO in 2013 under the UPA government. She had a 5-year term, but she resigned in 2016 within 3 years of her tenure after certain controversies erupted regarding her role in the stock exchange.
And what is the reason that we are talking about her today?
We are talking about Chitra Ramkrishna because of a bizarre finding by the Securities and Exchange Board of India, which in its investigations found that Chitra Ramkrishna was actually sharing confidential information with some yogi sitting in the Himalayas. This bizarre turn of events in the functioning of the National Stock Exchange is why it has caught the imagination of both the financial world as well as India in general, that for 20 years, one of the senior most people in the National Stock Exchange was actually seeking advice from a Himalayan yogi to run the biggest boards in India. And she was sharing confidential information such as about board meetings, decisions taken inside the board, or future plans, or dividend ratio, and such things which can only be shared within the board or within the NSE with somebody sitting outside, and that too, some saint that she had met some 20 years ago. So this was seen as a very, very serious, not just lapse, but a commission of offense by a very senior member of the National Stock Exchange. And the Securities and Exchange Board of India started an investigation. There was an audit report by Ernst & Young. And finally, there has been a case by the Central Bureau of Investigation where one of her subordinates has already been arrested.
And you mentioned that she had been doing this for 20 years. Now, that's a long time. What kind of influence did this so-called yogi have on her?
In fact, the Security and Exchange Board of India report says that Chitra Ramkrishna was actually just a puppet. And NSE for all those years was being actually run by this yogi, this mystical figure that nobody exactly knows, nobody has concluded with certainty as to who it is. Actually, he was the one who was running the National Stock Exchange, not only in terms of what kind of steps National Stock Exchange needs to take, what kind of proposals need to be made to the board, even who are the people who need to be promoted, who are the people who need to be appointed at certain places. That was the kind of influence this yogi had on Chitra Ramkrishna, at least according to the SEBI report.
Also, Deeptiman, in what way can someone gain by learning confidential information about a company like the National Stock Exchange?
Look, financial markets deal in millions and billions of rupees daily. Now, time is of essence when you're trading on the stock exchange. Even an information which your competitors may not have and you have it earlier by few seconds can help you make millions on the bourse. In fact, as a case demonstrates, which is what being investigated by the Central Bureau of Investigation, is that information or the ability to log in into the boards, in fact, milliseconds before others, can help you mint money. and surge ahead of your competition. In fact, the 2018 case in which the Central Bureau of Investigation has arrested the former group operating officer of the National Stock Exchange, Anand Subramanian, is about the National Stock Exchange's co-location facility, where brokers were allowed to have their systems placed in a location near to the National Stock Exchange server, which allowed them to connect with the NSE server faster than anyone who was not part of the co-location facility. And this company, OPG Securities, manipulated this co-location facility by bribing some NSE officials, and they were able to grant this company access to the NSE server faster than anybody else, and they made millions out of it. So that's how important any financial information of the National Stock Exchange that can be shared with any outsider can benefit him.
Okay, so Chitra Ramakrishna shares confidential information with this mystic yogi, and he ends up taking a lot of important decisions regarding the National Stock Exchange over the years. Now, although we don't know who this person is, there has been a lot of suspicion about who he possibly could be. And in that sense, one name that people are suspicious about is Anand Subramaniam, who was part of the NSC and who was brought in during Chitra Ramakrishna's tenure. So why are people suspecting him to be this yogi?
Well, there are a few reasons for it. One is that Anand Subramanian used to have tremendous influence over Chitra Ramakrishna while he was there in the NSE. And Chitra Ramakrishna had bent rules to bring him to a senior position in the National Stock Exchange while she was the MD and CEO. And as people say that he had a free run in the NSE, and even people senior to him couldn't hold him to account. So one reason being cited is that. Now, when that is seen parallelly with the kind of conversations and the email exchanges that she was having with the so-called Himalayan yogi, some parallels have been brought, which include similarity of language and some similar phrases used in emails sent by Subramanian and that Himalayan yogi. However, most importantly, the Ernst & Young report, which investigated into who this mystical Himalayan yogi could be. Some of the things which it cited as forensic evidence by examining the NSE systems, the email exchanges, and the laptops used by the people involved in all of this. It said that some of the emails which this mystical Himalayan yogi sent had attachments. Some of these attachments were pictures. At least 2 pictures were geotagged.
Geotagged meaning from the picture you can detect the location of where the picture was clicked.
Exactly. So now these geotagged images had a location which was just 13 meters from the Chennai residence of Anand Subramanian. And then there is a hotel booking which is being talked about in an email by the Himalayan yogi, who says that he has booked a hotel for Kanchan, who is supposed to be another name for Anand Subramanian. And he's sending this to Chitra Ramakrishna. It is also marked to Subramanian. But the payment for this hotel has actually gone from Subramanian's account even before this email has been sent. Then there are several email attachments. When you modify an attachment, it records as to who it has been modified by. So many of these attachments have been modified by attachments in the Himalayan yogi's email have actually been modified by Subramanian, and some of them minutes before they were sent. So now, although the Ernst & Young report says that it really believes that the Himalayan yogi is none other than Anand Subramanian, but there are many theories around it, and many people have argued that probably Anand Subramanian may have been in cahoots with this Himalayan yogi, but he's not Himalayan yogi. There are many reasons which have been cited. For example, people say that if the geotagged images which were sent and were 13 meters from Chennai residence, have the investigating agencies concluded whether Anand Subramanian was even there in Chennai at that time? So, those kind of questions are still there, which CBI needs to figure out.
Okay, so this one point you mentioned, but what other things do people point out that Anand Subramaniam may not be the yogi?
So, some people have pointed out that the kind of language and structure and articulation that is there in this Himalayan yogi's emails, Subramanian has never been seen being capable of such articulation. Then this Himalayan yogi is supposed to have had very deep knowledge of the National Stock Exchange. Another thing that people don't associate with Subramanian, because this person had a deep knowledge of not just about National Stock Exchange functioning, but its organization, people in it, people who had left National Stock Exchange. In fact, he bats for some people who have left National Stock Exchange earlier and wants them to be given certain assignments. So some people have argued that probably this is some former NSE, either employee or senior functionary. Some people have also pointed out to a former minister of the UPA government. So all of this currently is in the realm of investigations, and Ernst & Young, being an audit firm, would have had its limitations of how further it can investigate on these matters. But CBI, being a statutory agency, has full freedom to get to the bottom of it.
And so far, what are the kind of repercussions that Chitra Ramakrishna has faced?
Chitra Ramakrishna has been indicted by SEBI and has been penalized to the tune of crores of rupees for the decisions that she's taken during her tenure as the NSE MD and CEO. After that, the CBI obviously has started an investigation. She has already been questioned by the CBI, and even former CEO of NSE, Ravi Narayan, has been questioned by CBI. Apart from that, we all know CBI has already arrested Anand Subramanian. So, of course, the case is still developing, and more action, it appears, is in the offing as far as this entire matter is concerned.
And next we talk about quick commerce. Over the past few months, online grocery shopping in India has seen a major change. And this is because many companies are now promising to deliver groceries in just 10 minutes.
Need soap instantly? Need tea instantly? Need chocolates instantly? Use Swiggy Instamart.
Download Zepto. 10-minute grocery delivery.
Blinkit, your favorite 10-minute delivery app. Grofers is now Blinkit.
So be it companies like Zepto, Blinkit and Swiggy Instamart, or Big Basket's BB Now, Reliance-backed Dunzo and Ola Dash, they are all trying to capture this market. And 10-minute deliveries have become really popular, especially among the younger generation. In this segment, Indian Express's Pranav Mukul joins us to talk about exactly how these companies are being able to deliver on their promises. Pranav, so tell us, how are these companies like Blinkit and Zepto managing to deliver groceries so fast? Because delivering something in 10 minutes almost seems impossible, especially in places like Delhi and Bangalore, where traffic can be really bad. So how are they managing to do it?
So, Shashank, if you see the process of having groceries delivered in 10 minutes, from an app point of view, it might be a new thing, but for a lot of people who, live in apartment complexes with a nearby market or a nearby grocer that is within the complex or in the locality, this has not been a new thing. People have been ordering and they've been getting their orders delivered in 10, 15, 20 minutes for a long, long time now. But what's happened now is that this Q-commerce segment or the quick commerce segment, that's really upended the online grocery system, because as far as online grocers were concerned, like Big Basket or like Grofers earlier, even Amazon, JioMart, all of these guys had a certain supply chain to go through before they delivered the order, and that usually took at least from 6 to 8 hours to probably even a few days sometimes. A lot of inventory management went into it and all that. Now, what these quick commerce guys have done is that, again, they've replicated the model of these nearby grocers and they've opened these micro warehouses, or what they call dark stores, closer to a certain locality. So each dark store will service households that are not more than 3 kilometers away in radius from the said dark store.
So instead of having one big warehouse in the outskirts of the city, there are mini warehouses closer to localities.
That's right. But these warehouses are not the only thing that have made this possible, and on such a large scale and on such a consistent basis, because there's a lot of technology also that has gone into making this possible. So, for example, if you're on a Zepto or a Blinkit, as soon as you're on the checkout page where you've selected your order, things start rolling. So the delivery executive that's stationed outside one of these dark stores, he gets a notification that he's been pre-assigned to deliver an order.
So this entire process has started even before I have paid any money, basically.
Yeah. So this is before you press the checkout button. So the app understands that, there is going to be an order. So he pre-assigns a delivery guy. Now, unlike food delivery orders where you'd have noticed that, whenever you place order for food on a Zomato or Swiggy, you place the order and then there's some lag before the delivery executive is assigned to your order. So what these Q-commerce guys have done is that they've taken that time spent out of the equation. And unlike your Swiggy or Zomato guy who's roaming around waiting for an order, these quick commerce delivery guys, they'll always be stationed outside the dark store. So whenever they get an order, they'll deliver it to the household and they'll come back to the dark store. That's all they have to do. So they don't have to roam around looking from where they could get orders or be in a location where, for example, restaurants are located, something that the Swiggy or Zomato guys do. So which is how the companies are also able to pre-assign these delivery executives to the order that they're expecting to be placed. Now, once this order is placed, then the process inside the warehouse begins basically. So what happens is that there'll be a picker inside the warehouse who will get a notification on his smartphone that, an order has come and these are the items. And he'll also be guided by the app as to where in the warehouse these certain items are located. Now, a lot of thought has gone behind even designing these micro warehouses or dark stores so as to, place the high frequency items right up front so that picker doesn't have to run all the way back to pick that item. And so a lot of thought has gone into saving each second to an extent as much as possible.
Okay, so if people order eggs, bread, and milk on a daily basis, those items will be kept in front so that you can reach them faster.
Yeah. So you made a good point. So typically it would be, bread, eggs, milk, dairy products, all of this would be kept right up front. But for example, one of the warehouses that our colleague Somirendra visited in Ghaziabad found out that in that particular area, eggs are not consumed so much, going by the food habits of the households who reside there. So in that particular dark store, the eggs were placed towards the end because there was not so much of uptake for eggs in that dark store. So that's one example of it, how each and every dark store will have its product placements customized to what are the most frequent items being consumed in that particular locality where it is present.
Okay, so after the person at this dark store has given the items to the delivery person who is already standing and waiting outside, I'm guessing at least 2 minutes would have passed by then?
So that's right. It takes them a maximum of 2 minutes depending on the size of the order to pick these items, have them scanned and billed and then packed. In some cases, the average is also around 58 seconds. So for an order of say 4 to 5 to 6 items, these pickers manage to pack it under a minute. And what they want to do is, because the most unpredictable part of this whole process is the delivery ultimately. You don't know, how the road condition is going to be. Actually, a lot of thought has also gone into the road condition, the weather, the traffic pattern in deciding where to open the dark store in the first place. But still, there's always some unpredictability because of the kind of country that we live in, that, there might be an accident somewhere, there might be a traffic jam somewhere suddenly that is unexpected. So they keep these 8 to 9 minutes, which is the longest sort of portion of the 10-minute promise that they've made for the delivery. And also in a country like India, where there are households are situated in very dense localities, there are multi-story buildings, there's a lot of point of contact. Once the delivery guy reaches the society gate, he has to interact with the society guard, get himself checked in, and then figure his way out to the doorstep. It takes a lot of time. So they've kept the longest time for the delivery. And also, while they promise 10 minutes, in some cases, if your order is large and it's farther away, it does end up becoming more than 10 minutes. And sometimes these apps also tend to, inform you beforehand that it's going to take 15 minutes or 20 minutes or something like that.
Okay, so while trying to make this possible, you mentioned there is bad weather coming in the way, there are traffic jams, you have to deal with the security guards. So what are the kind of challenges that delivery executives face in trying to deliver groceries in that 8 minutes window that is left?
So, what some of the delivery executives have told us is that, and this is despite companies telling us that they do not incentivize their delivery executives to deliver it within 10 minutes. But obviously there's this pressure that these delivery guys are facing to deliver it within the promised time frame. And some of them have told us that they tend to drive on the wrong side of the road, or they tend to violate some traffic rules to make it as quick as possible. I'm sure unlike food order or an Amazon delivery that typically comes to your house, you would have observed if you order from a quick commerce website, the delivery guy is typically in much higher of a hurry than any of these other guys. And that's just the nature of their job. But yeah, the companies have told us that they do not incentivize these guys to deliver it within the stipulated time frame. But obviously there's some kind of pressure on them to do that, which is why they tend to, violate these traffic rules and all that.
And Pranav, how big is this 10-minute delivery segment? Like, what do we know about how popular it is?
So there was a survey recently which said that 1 out of every 4 people who buy groceries online are using Q-commerce. But we have also spoken to some experts who told us that the items that are bought from these Q-commerce apps, and like I said, the warehouses where they've stored these items are smaller ones. They're micro warehouses compared to the larger warehouses that typically a big basket or an Amazon has, like you mentioned, in the outskirts of the city. And as a result of that, these smaller warehouses also have a lesser number of items that they stock. It's fewer than what a typical warehouse. So what we've understood is that these smaller warehouses, they keep around 1,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 stock keeping units, whereas bigger warehouse will have somewhere around 1 lakh SKUs. So they're also limiting in the kind of items that people can order. And that's also been seen in the trend of what people are ordering, is that they're mostly ordering impulse buy chips and cold drinks and something that they might need last minute. Typically, they're not ordering a month's worth of groceries or ration from these apps. They're just ordering these impulse items, which they probably might need in a short period of time.
And Pranav, I remember earlier when this was just a concept, we had done a segment about it. And back then, there were some people who had said that this business model will not work because no one needs groceries delivered in 10 minutes. So does this essentially mean that people who raised those concerns have been proved wrong now?
It's still early days. A lot of these orders that are being placed on these Q-commerce apps are a result of heavy discounting that is being offered by these platforms, and also waiver of delivery fees to some extent. So all of that is driving the growth for now. And of course, it's really interesting to have your groceries delivered in 10 minutes, especially for millennials and the Gen Z, which is mostly the demographic that is ordering from these apps. Because like I said, having your groceries delivered in 10 minutes is not a new thing, but through technology, it's a fascinating thing. So that's happening right now. And we understand that once a user has placed 4 to 5 to 6 orders on one of these apps, they tend to stick around. But we also need to see how things pan out once these platforms start charging a delivery fee that is sustainable to their operation. Right now, all of them are in an expansion mode, and like any other consumer internet platform, it's being funded by discounts and freebies. But once it decides to be sustainable, that's when we'll really know whether there's an actual need for this kind of a product in the market or not.
And in the end, we talk about the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. The tensions between the two countries have escalated over the past few days. These tensions and the attacks by the Russian forces have led to the death of hundreds of innocent people and have led thousands to flee the country. People around the world have been keeping a close watch on the developments in Ukraine, and the events are being covered by news organizations globally. Though when it comes to the coverage of the crisis, several controversial statements have been made by news anchors and papers primarily from the West. In fact, the Arab and Middle Eastern Journalists Association recently described such coverage as Orientalist and racist. In a statement issued on Monday, the association said that this type of commentary reflects the pervasive mentality in Western journalism of normalizing tragedy in parts of the world such as the Middle East, Africa, South Asia, and Latin America. It dehumanizes and renders their experience with war as something normal and expected, unquote. The association also cited examples of racist news coverage. One such example was of CBS News anchor Charlie D'Agata, who in a segment aired on Saturday said this.
People are hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
Now, a day after he said this, D'Agata issued an apology on air, saying that he regrets speaking in that way, and he was trying to convey that Ukraine has not seen this kind of war in recent years. In the same vein, Al Jazeera anchor Peter Duby too has been criticized on social media and cited by the Arab and Middle Eastern Journalists Association for his comments.
We're playing in the latest pictures of some of the refugees trying to get on trains or trying to get out of Ukraine. And what's compelling is just looking at them, the way they're dressed. These are prosperous, I'm loath to use the expression, these are prosperous middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
In another instance, journalist Daniel Hannan wrote in The Telegraph, a leading British newspaper, that, quote, "They seem so like us. This is what makes it so shocking. War is no longer something visited upon impoverished and remote populations. It can happen to anyone," unquote. And it's not just news channels and papers. Ukrainian Deputy Chief Prosecutor David Sakvarelits, who appeared on the BBC, was also called out for his overtly racist remarks.
I'm sorry, it's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles.
The Arab and Middle Eastern Journalists Association in its statement asserted that newsrooms must not make comparisons that weigh the significance or imply justification of one conflict over another civilian casualties, and displacement in other countries are equally as abhorrent as they are in Ukraine. The statement further said that the association stands in full solidarity with all civilians under military assault in any part of the world, and that they deplore the difference in news coverage of people in one country versus another. It said, quote, "Not only can such coverage decontextualize conflicts, but it contributes to the erasure of populations around the world who continue to experience violent occupation and aggression," unquote. You were listening to Three Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, with help from Damini German, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Babar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.